In the quiet farmlands of Tennessee, a family thought they were safe, until a strange voice started whispering in the dark. Objects moved on their own, terrifying messages appeared, and what began as harmless pranks soon became a nightmare that would haunt the Bell family for 4 terrifying years. This was no ordinary spirit. This was the Bell Witch. The Bell Witch haunting, 1817 to 1821, Tennessee. The whisper that shook a family. It began with a whisper that refused to stop. In the early 1800s, deep in the quiet farmlands of Robertson County, Tennessee, the Bell family lived what many would call a perfect frontier life. John Bell, a strong and respected farmer, had recently moved his wife, Lucy Bell, and their children from North Carolina to this new land, seeking peace and prosperity. Their new farm stretched across hundreds of acres of fertile soil. The rolling hills and thick woods surrounded their log cabin, and every evening the air carried the smell of corn, tobacco, and home-cooked meals. The Bell home was known for its warmth, the laughter of children, the hum of Lucy's cooking, and John's deep voice reading from the Bible at night. But as the year 1817 dawned, something sinister crept quietly into their lives, something they could neither see nor explain. It started on a cool autumn evening. John Bell was walking through his cornfield, checking the crops before dusk, when he noticed something moving between the rows. At first, he thought it was a stray dog, but as it turned toward him, his heart froze. The creature's body was that of a dog, but its head was shaped like a rabbit. Its eyes glowed faintly in the fading light. John blinked, unsure if his mind was playing tricks on him. Slowly, he raised his gun and fired. The creature didn't move. It simply vanished into thin air. Shaken, John hurried home, trying to convince himself it was just fatigue or shadows playing tricks. But when night fell, the Bell family began to hear something that made them question everything they knew. A faint knocking echoed from the wooden walls of their cabin. Just 3 slow taps. John lit a lantern and searched outside. Nothing. No footprints. No animals. Only the still, silent darkness of the Tennessee countryside. The next night, the knocking returned, louder this time. Then came scratching, like fingernails dragging across the floorboards. The family gathered close, praying, but the noises continued, circling the house, tapping at windows, rattling the door latches. At first, they tried to ignore it, believing it would stop on its own. But it didn't. Each night, the sounds grew bolder. The whispers began, faint at first, like the wind murmuring through the cracks of the house. Then clearer. Sometimes they sounded like soft voices arguing, other times like children giggling. John stayed up late, trying to catch whoever or whatever was doing this. He thought maybe it was a prank by neighbors or thieves trying to scare them away. But every time he searched, the noises would stop, only to start again the moment he returned inside. Days turned into weeks. Sleep left the Bell household. The family began to live in constant fear of the night. Even during the day, strange things happened. Tools went missing from the barn and reappeared in odd places. Food vanished from the table. The children claimed to see shadows moving just beyond the corners of their eyes. One evening, Lucy Bell was sewing near the fireplace when she heard the sound of chains dragging across the floor behind her. She turned, nothing. The sound continued, circling the room, scraping the wooden boards. The children screamed. John shouted prayers, commanding whatever it was to leave their home, but the noises only laughed softly in reply. Neighbors began to notice the change in the family. The once cheerful Bells looked tired, anxious, and pale. John confided in a close friend, James Johnston, about the strange occurrences. James laughed at first, until he agreed to spend the night at the Bell home to see for himself. That night, the two men sat by the fireplace, keeping watch. Hours passed in silence. Just when they began to relax, a loud thump echoed from the ceiling, followed by furious scratching inside the walls. Then came a whisper, faint, but unmistakable. "John Bell. John Bell." The men froze. James whispered a prayer, clutching his Bible. Suddenly, something invisible slapped him across the face. He yelped in shock, a red mark appearing on his cheek. The room went cold, icy cold. The fire flickered and nearly died. At dawn, the men left, pale and trembling. James Johnston told everyone in town, "There's something evil in that house, something not of this world." And that's when the haunting truly began. From that moment, the Bell family realized they weren't dealing with thieves or tricks. They were living with something intelligent, something angry, something that wanted to be heard. The nights grew darker, the whispers louder, and soon, the unseen presence would start to speak. Little did the Bells know, they were standing at the edge of one of America's most terrifying legends. The Bell Witch haunting. The voice in the dark. The nights on the Bell farm were no longer silent. Every evening, as darkness crept over the fields of Tennessee, the Bell family braced themselves for the unknown. They had grown used to the knocking, the scratching, and the whispers, but what came next would defy all logic, all faith, and all courage. It began with Betsy Bell, John's youngest daughter. She was a bright, kind-hearted girl, known for her laughter and gentle nature. But lately, Betsy seemed different, pale, tired, and terrified. One night, she woke up screaming. When her mother, Lucy, rushed into the room, she found Betsy trembling, her hair tangled and tears in her eyes. "Something pulled my hair," she cried. "It hit me." Lucy tried to calm her down, brushing her hair softly. But when she looked closer, she gasped. Red marks were forming on Betsy's cheeks, as if invisible hands had slapped her. From that night onward, Betsy became the center of the haunting. Every evening, unseen hands would pull her blankets, pinch her arms, or slap her face. Sometimes she felt someone's cold breath near her ear, whispering things she couldn't understand. John Bell was furious. "Who dares to touch my child?" he shouted into the empty air. A laugh echoed in response, soft, mocking, female. Then came the voice. At first, it was faint, a low murmur that drifted through the air like the rustling of leaves. The family leaned closer, trying to catch the words. Slowly, it grew clearer, until one night, it spoke distinctly for the first time. "I am the Witch of Kate Batts." The family froze. The name sent chills down their spines. Kate Batts was their neighbor, a peculiar woman who lived not far from the Bell farm. People whispered that she practiced strange rituals and spoke curses when angry. Years earlier, John Bell had done business with her over a land deal, and rumor had it that she believed he had cheated her. Now this voice, this thing, claimed to be her spirit. When the Bells told the neighbors what they heard, no one believed them. But then, others began to witness it too. Visitors came to the house, daring the witch to speak. She did. When a local preacher demanded, "If you are truly a spirit, show yourself." The room suddenly shook, and the preacher was flung backward, his Bible ripped from his hands. Another guest heard the witch recite Bible verses word for word, mocking the very prayers meant to drive her away. The entity seemed to know everything, every secret, every lie, every hidden sin. It could mimic voices perfectly. Sometimes it spoke in a deep man's tone, other times like a child, or even two people arguing at once. One evening, as the family gathered for prayer, the voice interrupted, saying, "Amen to that, Lucy, but not you, John Bell." Then it burst into a high-pitched laugh that echoed through the cabin walls. The Bell Witch was growing stronger, feeding on fear, anger, and disbelief. As weeks turned to months, the haunting became a spectacle. People traveled from across Tennessee and even neighboring states to witness the mysterious voice for themselves. Some came to pray, others came to taunt it, but all left with trembling hands and pale faces. A story spread of a visitor who doubted the witch's existence. He mocked the Bells, saying, "You're all fools, scaring yourselves with bedtime tales." That night, as he sat in the Bell home, the voice called out his full name, and repeated a conversation he had had privately with his wife the night before. The man's face turned white. He fell to his knees, whispering, "God forgive me," before running out of the house and never returning. The witch was no longer just a haunting, she was a personality, an intelligence that seemed to know everything, see everything, and control everything within those walls. But she wasn't always cruel. At times, she spoke softly to Lucy Bell, calling her a good woman and blessing her health. She even sang hymns in the night, her voice floating gently through the darkness. Yet the same voice would turn cold and venomous whenever John Bell entered the room. She called him a cheat, a liar, a man of evil heart. The attacks on Betsy continued relentlessly. Sometimes she'd faint during church or wake up with bruises she couldn't explain. Neighbors suggested she might be possessed, but even the priests who tried to bless her were driven out by the witch's mocking laughter. One night, the witch whispered in Betsy's ear, "You will never marry Joshua Gardner. I will see to that." Joshua was Betsy's sweetheart, and soon after, their engagement broke apart under mysterious circumstances, just as the witch predicted. By now, the Bell Witch had become a legend. Travelers came just to hear her speak. Locals began to fear the land itself, whispering prayers when they passed the Bell property. John Bell knew his family was being watched, and not just by the townsfolk. The witch seemed to know his every move, his every thought. Every night before bed, her voice would drift through the air, low and threatening. "John Bell, I will never rest until you are gone." The Bell family's nightmare was far from over. The whispers had become words, and soon, those words would lead to death. The town that heard the witch. By 1819, the strange happenings at the Bell farm were no longer just a family problem. They had become a local sensation. The voice that haunted the Bell household had grown louder, sharper, and far more daring. It wasn't only whispering threats or slapping Betsy anymore. It spoke to entire rooms, to visitors, and even to people who had come just to mock the Bells. News spread quickly through Robertson County, and soon people were traveling from neighboring towns to witness the Bell Witch for themselves. Skeptics arrived, determined to expose the story as a hoax. Believers came, desperate for signs of the supernatural. The farm became a gathering place for curiosity, fear, and disbelief, and the witch played her audience like a master. When guests entered the Bell home, they were immediately met with strange occurrences. Doors slammed without warning, chairs tipped over as if pushed by invisible hands, and the air often became icy cold. But the most astonishing phenomenon was the voice itself. A voice with power, intelligence, and a wicked sense of humor. The witch could answer questions, predict events, and even quote Bible verses with eerie precision. She mocked the most devout, laughed at the proudest men, and terrified even the bravest women. Sometimes she would speak gently, almost kindly, to Lucy Bell, praising her devotion. But John Bell was never spared. The witch called him cruel names, accused him of dishonesty, and threatened his life repeatedly. Stories of her cleverness and malice spread across the countryside. One notable tale tells of a man who openly ridiculed the Bells. "It's all nonsense," he laughed, boasting he would spend the night at their home. That very night, the witch mocked him by repeating a private conversation he had held with his wife, revealing secrets no one else could possibly know. Terrified, the man fled, never returning. It wasn't just whispers and predictions. The witch could manipulate the physical world as well. Guests reported being slapped, pulled, or even struck by invisible objects. She knocked over furniture, rattled chains, and created a storm of noise that seemed to surround the house. Those who tried to argue with her found themselves trapped in a night of fear and chaos. Word of the Bell Witch reached even the highest circles of American society. Future President Andrew Jackson heard the tales and decided to investigate personally. Along with his men, he approached the Bell property with skepticism and bravado, expecting to find only frightened, superstitious farmers. But the witch had plans for Jackson and his men. Their wagons stopped suddenly, the horses refusing to move, as if held back by an unseen force. Then, in the crisp night air, a female voice called out, mocking and commanding, "I'll see you tonight, General." That night, Jackson's camp was a scene of terror. Invisible hands slapped the men, threw objects across the tents, and knocked loudly at the sides of wagons. Horses panicked, men screamed, and the voice laughed, clear and chilling in the darkness. The next morning, Jackson reportedly left the area, pale and unsettled, reportedly saying, "I would rather face the British in battle than the Bell Witch." The witch's reach extended far beyond the Bell household. People in the town began to fear the land itself. Travelers whispered prayers as they passed the property, and families avoided the area after sunset. Even those who had never visited knew of the Bell Witch's power. She was no longer just a local haunting, she was a legend in the making. The witch didn't just frighten people, she manipulated events, sometimes with frightening accuracy. She predicted personal misfortunes, spoke of illnesses before they struck, and even foretold deaths in the community. Her intelligence made her terrifying. She was not a mindless spirit, she was calculating, malicious, and all-seeing. Despite the fear, curiosity brought more and more visitors to the farm. Some came to pray, some to test her, and others simply to witness what could not be explained. Every night, the cabin became a theater of terror. The witch's voice could sound like a child one moment, a man the next, and a group of people arguing the moment after. She could answer questions, mock individuals, and even offer spiritual guidance, depending on her mood. Locals would recall how the witch's presence dominated every gathering, creating fear and awe in equal measure. She became part of the town's identity, a force that could not be ignored, laughed at, or defeated. And through it all, the Bell family endured. Their home became the stage for one of the most notorious hauntings in American history. Every visitor who left carried with them a story, a tale of invisible hands, chilling voices, and the relentless power of the Bell Witch. The town had heard the witch, and now the world was starting to take notice. She was no longer confined to whispers in the Bell home. She was a name spoken in fear across Tennessee and a legend that would endure for centuries. Little did the townspeople know, the witch's next moves would be even more deadly, targeting the very man who had unknowingly angered her, John Bell himself. The witch's vengeance. The Bell Witch had become more than a haunting. She had become a force of wrath and revenge, and her fury now turned directly toward John Bell, the man she claimed had wronged her centuries earlier through the spirit of Kate Batts. For years, the Bell family had endured her pranks, whispers, and physical attacks, but nothing could have prepared them for the relentless, personal torment the witch now unleashed on John himself. It began subtly at first. John felt a chill whenever he entered the house alone, a cold breath against his neck even in the heat of summer. He awoke in the middle of the night with scratches and bruises, invisible to any human eye. Tools and equipment he left in the barn were overturned or broken. Meals he had prepared vanished. Even his prized animals became restless or sick for no reason he could understand. But soon, the witch became bolder. She spoke to John directly, taunting him. "John Bell, I will see you in your bed soon," she whispered. "I will end your life and have my vengeance." The words were chilling, but John, a proud and stubborn man, refused to bow to fear. He tried prayer, fasting, and even confronted the spirit aloud in his home. But the witch laughed, mocking his efforts. She was stronger, smarter, and crueler than any force he had ever faced. As months passed, John's health began to decline mysteriously. He developed tremors, sudden fainting spells, and an ailment no doctor could diagnose. Some townspeople speculated he was sick from worry. Others whispered that the Bell Witch had cursed him with dark magic, sapping his strength with every passing day. Meanwhile, Betsy and the rest of the family continued to be harassed, but it was John who bore the brunt of her fury. At night, the unseen presence would pummel him with invisible blows, leave him bound and unable to move, or hurl objects at him while laughing mockingly. The Bell home had become a place of terror, where even daylight offered little reprieve. The witch didn't stop at mere physical torment. She spoke of death, and John knew it was no idle threat. "You will die, John Bell. You cannot escape me," she said one night, her voice echoing through the cabin. "Your time has come, and I will be there when you take your last breath." By 1820, John Bell's friends and neighbors were deeply concerned. He had grown weak, pale, and frail. The once proud farmer now looked like a man awaiting inevitable doom. The witch had made her intentions clear. John Bell was marked for death. Then, in December of that year, the prophecy was fulfilled. John Bell was found dead in his bed. The cause of death puzzled many. Some said it was a mysterious illness, others swore it was the work of the Bell Witch. Beside him lay a strange vial of dark liquid, which the spirit later claimed was her final act of vengeance. "I gave him that potion," she boasted to the family. "It fixed him forever." At his funeral, the townspeople reported something chilling. As mourners lowered the coffin into the ground, the witch's laughter echoed from the woods surrounding the property. She sang mocking drinking songs and shouted taunts, defying the grief of the Bell family and all who were present. Even after John's death, the witch did not vanish entirely. She spoke to the remaining Bell family members, predicting events and offering cryptic messages about the future. But her greatest victory, taking John Bell's life, had been achieved, leaving a mark on the community that would endure for generations. For the Bell family, the witch's vengeance was a daily reminder of power beyond human understanding. She had proved she could manipulate the physical world, torment the living, and take a man's life. Fear became a permanent resident in their home, and caution governed their every action. Visitors continued to come, drawn by stories of a supernatural force capable of killing and mocking a man in the prime of his life. Skeptics and believers alike bore witness to the legacy of the Bell Witch, a story of revenge, intelligence, and relentless power. The townspeople would later recall that the Bell Witch's rage had been focused, calculated, and unyielding. No ordinary spirit could have caused such sustained suffering. She was clever, cruel, and fully aware of her impact on the Bell family and the community. By the time the haunting began to subside in the years after John Bell's death, her legacy had been cemented in history. The story of a vengeful spirit that spoke, laughed, predicted, and killed became one of the most terrifying legends in American folklore. And though she seemed to disappear, the family knew, and the whispers confirmed, that the witch had not truly left. Her vengeance had been fulfilled, but her presence remained, a dark shadow over the Bell farm and a chilling reminder of the power of the unseen. The spirit that never died. Even after John Bell's death, the terror of the Bell Witch did not end. She had fulfilled her vengeance, yes, but the spirit lingered, her presence woven into the land, the trees, and the very air around the Bell farm. The remaining family, Lucy Bell and her children, continued to live under her watchful, malevolent eye. Strange occurrences persisted. Objects moved on their own, chairs tipped over, whispers echoed through the halls, and shadows darted across rooms. Yet now, the witch's focus shifted. She began to speak more to John Bell Jr., the eldest son, as if passing on her knowledge, her warnings, and her strange fascination with the living. Visitors still came to the Bell farm, eager to witness the supernatural. Skeptics arrived, determined to prove the Bell Witch a fraud. But she had grown wiser, subtler, and even more cunning. She spoke through the walls, the floors, and even the trees outside. Her voice could mimic anyone's, answer questions, and reveal secrets hidden from the world. Those who dared question her were often humiliated or frightened into silence. Some stories tell of her appearing in visions or dreams, whispering cryptic prophecies and advice to those who slept near the farm. Others reported that she could sing lullabies, pray, or scold, depending on her mood. She had evolved from a simple spirit of vengeance into an entity of intelligence, observation, and willpower. Years passed, and the family noticed a strange pattern. The Bell Witch would return in cycles, always appearing at crucial moments, sometimes to warn, sometimes to frighten, and sometimes merely to observe. In 1828, for example, she spoke to the family once again after several years of silence. She discussed religion, morality, and even the future in a tone that was eerily calm compared to her earlier rage. During this time, her voice gave lessons, sometimes philosophical, sometimes cryptic. It was as if the Bell Witch had matured, her rage replaced with the quiet authority of someone who had seen the consequences of anger and vengeance firsthand. Yet she remained dangerous, for her presence was a reminder that the supernatural world existed just beyond human understanding. The legend says that before vanishing again, she promised to return, but not for centuries. She claimed she would come back in 107 years, leaving an open-ended warning that her spirit was bound to the land and the family line, never truly gone. And indeed, there were reports of strange phenomena on the Bell property long after the family had moved on. In 1935, over a century after the original events, locals reported whispers in the woods, strange lights near the old farm, and the sound of chains dragging across the floor of the old cabin. Some claimed it was the Bell Witch returning to remind the world of her presence. The Bell Witch's story spread beyond Robertson County, becoming a part of American folklore. Her tale was told and retold, chilling audiences across generations. What made her legend terrifying wasn't just her ability to harm the living, it was her intelligence, foresight, and seemingly limitless power. She was not a mindless spirit, but a conscious entity, capable of manipulation, revenge, and observation. Visitors who explored the land near the Bell property still report feeling a watchful presence, hearing unexplained whispers, footsteps, or sudden cold drafts. Some claim to see shadows moving near the old Bell Witch Cave, a natural formation where locals believe the spirit had spent time during her active years. Others swear they felt invisible hands brush against them or heard faint laughter echoing through the woods. The Bell Witch is more than a story of terror, she is a symbol of the unknown, the power of vengeance, and the thin boundary between the living and the supernatural. She reminds us that some forces in the world cannot be explained, controlled, or defeated. Her presence lingers in the hearts of those who hear her tale, and in the land she once haunted so fiercely. Even today, generations later, the Bell Witch continues to inspire fear, curiosity, and fascination. She is a legend that refuses to die, a story told in whispers, a haunting that transcends time, and a reminder that some spirits are eternal. As the wind blows through the trees of Tennessee, some say you can still hear her voice, soft, mocking, and ever-present. And when night falls over the old Bell property, locals whisper in awe and fear. She's still here, waiting and whispering. The Bell Witch lives on, not just in stories, but in the shadows of the night, in the creak of a floorboard, and in the whispers that make even the bravest tremble. The Bell Witch watched, whispered, and waited. Will you dare to visit her land? If you thought this was terrifying, wait until you hear the next haunting. Subscribe to discover more true stories.